The dust cloud rising from the Montana plains looked like the earth itself was breathing fire, and Evelyn Daniels stood at the edge of her father's ranch, squinting into the amber sunset, knowing she could not stay here another day without losing her soul entirely. She was 23 years old in the summer of 1882, and every dream she carried felt like a stone pressing against her chest. The ranch stretched for miles, cattle dotting the landscape like dark specks against golden grass, but all Evelyn could see were the walls closing in. Her father had died 6 months ago, leaving her the land, the animals, and the expectation that she would marry Samuel Preston, the neighboring rancher's son who looked at her like she was another piece of property to acquire. The Montana Territory had been her home since birth, but lately it felt more like a prison. She wanted to see San Francisco, to walk streets where women ran businesses and wore fashionable clothes from Paris. She wanted to attend a university back east, to study literature, and maybe even write books herself. She wanted to stand on a stage and recite poetry, to feel alive in a way that herding cattle and mending fences would never allow. "Miss Daniels, your guests are arriving," her housekeeper called from the porch. Evelyn turned, smoothing her simple cotton dress. The Prestons were coming for dinner, which meant another evening of Samuel's awkward courtship and his father's not-so-subtle comments about merging properties. She walked toward the house, her boots kicking up small clouds with each step. The dinner was exactly as suffocating as she had anticipated. Mrs. Preston talked endlessly about wedding preparations while Samuel sat across from Evelyn, his pale blue eyes never quite meeting hers. Mr. Preston discussed cattle prices and water rights, treating Evelyn like she was barely present. "A woman alone cannot manage a ranch of this size," Mr. Preston said, cutting into his beef. "Your father, God rest his soul, would have wanted you properly settled." "My father wanted me to be happy," Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "And you will be," Mrs. Preston chirped. "Samuel will make a fine husband. The wedding could be in October, just before the first snow." Evelyn set down her fork with more force than intended. "I have not agreed to marry anyone." The table fell silent. Samuel's ears turned red. Mr. Preston's jaw tightened. "Miss Daniels," he said slowly, "you are being unreasonable. What exactly do you plan to do? Run this ranch yourself?" "I plan to sell it," Evelyn heard herself say, the words tumbling out before she had fully formed the thought. But once spoken, they felt true. "I plan to sell everything and leave Montana." Mrs. Preston gasped. Samuel finally looked directly at her, his expression wounded. Mr. Preston's face darkened to an alarming shade of purple. "Leave? To go where? To do what?" Mr. Preston demanded. "To San Francisco initially. Then perhaps to New York. I want to attend university. I want to study literature and travel and see something beyond these endless fields." "That is the most foolish thing I have ever heard," Mr. Preston said, standing abruptly. "A young woman alone traveling across the country. You will be ruined, or worse. You will squander your inheritance on ridiculous fantasies." "They are not fantasies. They are my dreams. Dreams." Mr. Preston laughed harshly. "Dreams do not put food on the table or keep a roof over your head. You need practical solutions, not fairy tales." "We are leaving," Mr. Preston announced. "When you come to your senses, Miss Daniels, you know where to find us." "But I will not sit here and listen to such nonsense." The Preston family departed in a flurry of disapproval, leaving Evelyn alone in the large dining room. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline and fear mixing in her bloodstream. She had just destroyed her only security, her only viable future in this territory. She stepped outside onto the porch, breathing deeply. The summer air was warm and smelled of grass and distant rain. The ranch hands were finishing their evening chores, moving between the barn and the bunkhouse. Most of them had worked for her father for years, loyal men who did their jobs well but who probably would not want to work for a woman indefinitely. That sounded intense, a voice said from the shadows near the porch steps. Evelyn jumped, her heart hammering. A man stepped into the lamplight spilling from the house windows. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes that caught the light like polished wood. He wore the clothes of a working cowboy, dusty denim and worn leather, but there was something different about him, something in the way he carried himself. "I apologize for startling you," he said, removing his hat. "I am Xavier Emerson. Your foreman hired me this afternoon. I was told to report to the main house to introduce myself properly." Evelyn's heart was still racing, but she managed to compose herself. "My foreman hired you. I was not informed. He said you had been busy with preparations for dinner guests. I am sorry if this is a bad time." Xavier's voice was deep and calm, with an accent she could not quite place. Not quite Southern, not quite Western. "No, it is fine. I apologize for my rudeness. It has been a difficult evening." Evelyn studied him more carefully. He was probably around 27 or 28, with a strong jaw and weathered skin that spoke of years working outdoors. There was something honest in his face, something that made her feel slightly less defensive. "I gathered that," Xavier said, and there was the faintest hint of humor in his voice. The gentleman leaving looked ready to challenge someone to a duel. Despite everything, Evelyn felt a smile tug at her lips. That would require him to have some sense of honor rather than just indignation. Xavier's expression shifted into something that might have been approval. "You were discussing leaving Montana. You were eavesdropping. I was standing on your porch where I was told to wait. You were having a rather loud conversation inside. I could not help but hear." He paused, then added, "San Francisco is beautiful this time of year. You have been there. I have been many places. I grew up in Texas, worked ranches in Colorado and Wyoming, spent a year in California before drifting north." He looked out at the dark fields. "Montana is different, wilder. But California has opportunities, especially for someone with ambition." Evelyn found herself stepping closer, drawn by the possibility of talking to someone who understood that the world existed beyond ranch boundaries. "What brought you back north if California was so wonderful?" "I am a drifter by nature," Xavier said simply. "I stay in a place until it stops feeling right, then I move on. I have never been good at putting down roots." "That sounds lonely. Sometimes, but it is also freedom." He turned to look at her directly. "Your dreams of leaving, traveling, studying, those are not foolish." The words hit Evelyn like a physical thing. She had expected judgment, condescension, or dismissal. Instead, this stranger was validating everything she felt. "Most people think I am insane," she said quietly. "Most people are afraid of anything that challenges their small view of the world." Xavier put his hat back on. "I should let you get some rest. I will be staying in the bunkhouse with the other hands. If you need anything or want to discuss my duties here, I will be available." He started to leave, but Evelyn spoke before she could stop herself. "Mr. Emerson, have you ever wanted something so badly that it hurt? Something that everyone told you was impossible or inappropriate or too big for someone like you?" Xavier stopped, his back to her. When he turned around, his expression was serious. "Every day of my life, Miss Daniels. What did you do about it?" "I stopped listening to other people's limitations and started listening to my own heart. It has not always been easy, and I have made plenty of mistakes, but I have never regretted choosing my own path. Even when that path was lonely, even then." He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "Loneliness is not the worst thing in the world." Giving up who you are to please others, that is worse. Evelyn felt something shift inside her chest, like a door opening. Thank you, Mr. Emerson. Xavier, please. We are not formal people out here. Then you should call me Evelyn. He nodded once, a gesture that felt like a promise, then walked toward the bunkhouse. Evelyn watched him go, feeling more awake than she had in months. The next morning, Evelyn woke with new resolve. She dressed quickly and went to find her foreman, a grizzled man named Dutch who had worked for her father since before she was born. I need to know the exact value of this ranch, she told him. The land, the cattle, the equipment, everything. Dutch's weathered face showed surprise. You are serious about selling. I am serious about understanding my options. Miss Evelyn, your father built this place from nothing. It is a legacy. It is his legacy, Dutch, not mine. She softened her tone. I am grateful for everything my father built, but I cannot live his life. I need to find my own way. Dutch sighed heavily but nodded. I will get you those numbers, though I will tell you now, finding a buyer might take months, maybe longer. Then we start today. Over the following weeks, Evelyn threw herself into understanding every aspect of the ranch's finances. She rode out with the hands, learning the work in detail rather than the cursory knowledge her father had taught her. She reviewed ledgers and contracts, met with the town banker, and began quietly putting out word that the property might be available. Xavier was everywhere during those weeks. He was a skilled worker, quick to learn and natural with horses. But more than that, he seemed to understand what Evelyn needed before she asked. When she struggled to calm a nervous mare, he was there with quiet advice. When she needed an honest opinion about a contract, he gave it without condescension. When she looked overwhelmed, he somehow arranged for her to have a few hours of peace. They began talking in the evenings after the day's work was done. At first, it was practical conversations about the ranch. But gradually, the talks deepened. Xavier told her about growing up in Texas with a father who wanted him to be a lawyer and a mother who died when he was 16. He told her about choosing the uncertain life of a ranch hand over the comfortable future his father had planned, and the rift that had created between them. "Do you regret it?" Evelyn asked one evening. They were sitting on the porch steps, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "No," Xavier said. "My father wanted me to have his dream, not my own. I could not live a lie just to make him comfortable. But you left everything behind: security, family, a home. I gained something more important. I gained myself." He looked at her. "You understand that?" "I can see it in you." "What do you see?" "Someone who is brave enough to choose the uncertain path, because staying on the safe one would destroy something essential." His voice was gentle. "Someone who knows that dreams are not luxuries but necessities." Evelyn felt her throat tighten with emotion. "My father always told me I could be anything I wanted, but I do not think he really believed I would want something beyond this ranch. He raised me with these big ideas, but he expected me to settle into a small life." "That is the contradiction parents often create," Xavier said. "They want their children to have dreams as long as those dreams do not take them too far away or challenge the parents' own choices." "Did you ever reconcile with your father?" "No. He died 5 years ago, still angry that I had thrown away the opportunities he had worked so hard to give me. I wrote him letters for years, trying to explain, but he never responded." Xavier's voice was quiet but steady. "That is something I do carry. Not regret for my choices, but sadness that he could not accept them." Evelyn reached out and touched his hand briefly, a gesture of comfort. The contact sent a small shock through her, awareness of him as more than just a friend or employee. She pulled her hand back quickly, but not before she saw something shift in his expression. "You will not have that regret," Xavier said after a moment. Your father passed before this conflict could deepen. He loved you, and wherever he is, he wants you to be happy. I hope you are right. Summer deepened into August. The ranch routines continued, but Evelyn felt herself changing. The work that had seemed confining now felt different because she knew it was temporary. She could appreciate the beauty of Montana, the vast skies and the way sunlight turned the grasslands gold, because she was no longer trapped by them. And there was Xavier. She found herself watching for him, listening for his voice, creating excuses to seek his opinion on matters she could have decided herself. He made her laugh with dry observations about the other ranch hands. He challenged her thinking when she was being too cautious or too reckless. He treated her as an equal, not a woman to be managed or protected, but a person capable of making her own choices. One hot afternoon, they were working together to repair a section of fence that had been damaged by a fallen tree. It was hard physical labor, and Evelyn's hands were blistered despite her gloves. She paused to wipe sweat from her forehead, and Xavier handed her a canteen without her asking. "You do not have to prove anything," he said. "You could have sent the hands to do this." "I want to understand every part of this place before I leave it," Evelyn said. "Besides, I like this work, the simplicity of it. You see a problem, you fix it, you see immediate results. Not like dealing with bankers and lawyers." "Exactly." She drank deeply from the canteen, then handed it back. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Why did you take this job? You said you never stay anywhere long, but you have been here almost 2 months now. What is keeping you?" Xavier was silent for a long moment, his hands still working to tighten a wire. Finally, he said, "Honestly, you are." Evelyn's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I heard you that first night, telling those people about your dreams, defending your right to choose your own path. And I thought, there is someone who understands." He looked at her directly, his brown eyes intense. "I have spent years drifting, avoiding anything that felt like commitment or permanence. But listening to you talk about wanting to see the world, to learn and grow and experience life beyond these boundaries, it reminded me why I started traveling in the first place. Not to run away, but to run toward something." "What are you running toward?" "I am still figuring that out." He set down his tools and moved closer. "But I know it has something to do with you." Evelyn felt her breath catch. The air between them seemed charged with possibility. "Xavier, I am planning to leave. To sell everything and go. I cannot offer you anything stable." "I am not asking for stable," Xavier said. "I am saying that for the first time in my life, I want to stop drifting alone. You talked about dreams being too big, about wanting more than what this place can offer. I understand that, but what if you did not have to dream them alone?" "What are you saying?" "I am saying dream them with me." The words were simple but felt monumental. "San Francisco, New York, wherever you want to go. Let me come with you, not as your employee or your protector, but as your partner, someone who shares your vision of what life could be." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. "You would do that? Give up your drifting, your freedom?" "I am not giving it up. I am choosing to share it with someone who matters." Xavier reached out and gently touched her face, his calloused thumb brushing away a tear she had not realized had fallen. "I have been half alive for years, Evelyn, moving from place to place but never really arriving anywhere. When I am with you, I feel fully present for the first time since I left Texas." "I feel that too," Evelyn whispered. "When I am with you, everything seems possible." Xavier leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She did not want to. Their kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deepened into something that felt like coming home and setting off on an adventure simultaneously. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "Is this crazy?" Evelyn asked. "We have known each other for such a short time." Maybe, Xavier said, his forehead resting against hers. But I have learned that the best things in life usually seem a little crazy at first. I am still leaving Montana. I am still selling the ranch and pursuing those dreams. I know, and I want to be there for all of it if you will have me. Evelyn kissed him again, pouring into it all the hope and fear and excitement churning inside her. Yes, she said against his lips. Yes, I want that. I want you. They returned to the fence work, but everything had changed. There was a new ease between them, a sense of partnership that went beyond words. By the time they finished and rode back to the main house, the sun was setting in spectacular colors across the Montana sky. That evening they sat together on the porch, holding hands and making plans. Evelyn felt giddy, like she had drunk too much wine, though she was completely sober. The future that had seemed daunting when she faced it alone now felt thrilling with Xavier beside her. We should be practical, Evelyn said, though she could not stop smiling. The ranch will take months to sell. We need to plan carefully. Agreed. Where do we start? San Francisco, I think. It is far enough from here to feel like a real change, but not so far that the journey will be impossible. And there are opportunities there for both of us. I have contacts from my time in California, Xavier said. People who might help us get established. A friend who runs a theater might know about your writing and poetry. Evelyn squeezed his hand. This is really happening. It is really happening. Over the next several weeks, they worked together openly as partners. The ranch hands noticed the change and accepted it with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Dutch was skeptical but ultimately pragmatic, understanding that Evelyn had made her choice. Some of the younger hands were genuinely happy for them. A few of the older ones grumbled about impropriety, but Evelyn found she did not care. A potential buyer emerged in September, a cattle company looking to expand their operations into Montana. The negotiations were complex and sometimes frustrating, but Xavier was with her through all of it, offering advice without trying to take over. He treated her as the owner and decision-maker, supporting rather than controlling. "You are good at this," he told her after a particularly tense meeting with the company representatives. "Standing your ground, knowing your value, you are going to be formidable in whatever you choose to do next." "I have a good teacher," Evelyn said, leaning into him. They were alone in the study, and she felt safe enough to show affection. "You have shown me how to trust my own judgment. You already had that in you. I just reminded you of it." The sale was finalized in early October. The price was fair, enough to fund Evelyn's dreams with plenty left over for security. The ranch would officially transfer to the new owners in November, giving Evelyn time to arrange her affairs and for the hands to seek new employment. The night after the contracts were signed, Evelyn and Xavier celebrated quietly in the main house. She had cooked dinner herself, sending the housekeeper home early, wanting this moment to be private. "To new beginnings," Xavier said, raising his glass of wine. "To dreams we are brave enough to chase," Evelyn added. They drank, then Xavier set down his glass and pulled a small box from his pocket. Evelyn's heart began to race. "I know we are doing everything unconventionally," Xavier said. "We are not following any of the normal rules about courtship or propriety, but there is one tradition I want to honor." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring. "Evelyn Daniels, will you marry me?" Evelyn felt tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." Xavier slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. They kissed deeply, and the kiss led to more, a natural progression that felt right and beautiful. They moved to her bedroom, and there, in the house that had been her prison and was now her launching point, Evelyn discovered another kind of freedom in Xavier's arms. Later, Lying together in the darkness, Xavier held her close and said, "I love you, Evelyn. I did not expect this when I came to Montana. I did not expect you." "I love you too," Evelyn said, the words feeling both new and ancient. "I did not know I could feel this way. I thought pursuing my dreams meant being alone. Dreams are better when shared with the right person." "You are definitely the right person." They married quietly in town the following week, with Dutch and a few of the friendlier ranch hands as witnesses. The ceremony was simple, performed by a traveling minister passing through Montana. Evelyn wore a simple white dress she had made herself, and Xavier wore his best clothes, which were still the practical garments of a working man. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the vows they spoke, promising to support each other's dreams, to face the unknown together, to build a life based on partnership and love rather than convention and expectation. Samuel Preston heard about the wedding and showed up at the ranch the next day, his face red with anger. "You married a drifter, a hired hand, after refusing me." "I married a man who sees me as an equal," Evelyn said calmly. Xavier stood beside her on the porch, his presence steady and reassuring. "A man who encourages my dreams rather than dismissing them. I made the right choice." "You will regret this," Samuel said. "When you are destitute and abandoned in some strange city, you will wish you had accepted my offer." "If that happens, which it will not, I will still have no regrets," Evelyn said. "I would rather fail pursuing my own path than succeed following someone else's." Samuel left in a fury, and Evelyn felt only relief. That chapter of her life was truly closed. The remaining weeks in Montana passed quickly. Evelyn sorted through her father's belongings, keeping a few precious items and selling or donating the rest. She made arrangements for the furniture and household goods. She said goodbye to the town where she had grown up, to the few friends she had maintained, to the wide Montana sky she had both loved and resented. Xavier handled the practical details of their journey. He arranged for their travel to California, booked passage on trains and stage coaches, researched lodging options in San Francisco. He contacted his friends there, laying groundwork for their arrival. He did all of this while still treating Evelyn as an equal partner, consulting her on every decision. "We should discuss money," Xavier said one evening as they packed. "You have the proceeds from the ranch sale. That is your security, your inheritance. I do not want you to think I married you for financial gain." "I never thought that," Evelyn said, surprised by the concern in his voice. "Still, I want to be clear. We should keep your money separate in your name. I will find work in San Francisco. I am good with horses and there is always need for skilled labor. We will build our life together, but your inheritance remains yours." Evelyn moved closer to him. "Xavier, we are married. What is mine is yours." "No," he said firmly but gently. "What is yours is yours. I want to support you, not take from you. Your dreams require resources, and you should have the freedom to pursue them without worrying about finances. Let me contribute by working, by being your partner in other ways." Evelyn felt her love for him deepen even further. He was not threatened by her independence or her resources. He wanted her to have every advantage, every opportunity. "You are remarkable, do you know that? I just know what it is like to have limited options. I want you to have unlimited ones." They left Montana on a cold November morning, boarding a train that would take them south and west. Evelyn stood on the platform, taking one last look at the mountains rising in the distance, at the vast landscape that had shaped her. She felt a pang of something, not quite regret but a bittersweet acknowledgement of endings. Xavier took her hand. "Having second thoughts?" "No," Evelyn said, turning to face him. His brown eyes were warm with understanding and love. I am having grateful thoughts. Grateful for everything that brought me to this moment. But I am ready for what comes next. They boarded the train together, stepping into their future. The journey to San Francisco took over a week, with multiple train changes and uncomfortable nights in questionable hotels. But Evelyn found she did not mind the difficulties. Everything was new and exciting. She watched the landscape change from Montana's austere beauty to the lush forests of the Pacific Northwest. She talked with fellow travelers, hearing their stories and dreams. She wrote in a journal Xavier had given her, capturing impressions and ideas for potential stories. Xavier was a wonderful traveling companion. He was practical and resourceful, handling complications with easy competence. But he also knew when to simply be present, when Evelyn needed quiet to process her thoughts, or when she needed distraction from cramped quarters and long hours of travel. They reached San Francisco in late November, arriving to a city that took Evelyn's breath away. It was enormous, sprawling, alive with energy and possibility. Buildings climbed the steep hills, cable cars rattled up and down the streets, and the bay sparkled in the distance. The air smelled of salt and smoke and 1,000 cooking fires. People of every description crowded the sidewalks, speaking different languages, wearing clothes from around the world. "It is overwhelming," Evelyn said, gripping Xavier's arm as they navigated the chaos near the train station. "It is," Xavier agreed, "but it is also full of opportunity. Come on, I have arranged lodging for us." He led her through the streets to a modest but clean boarding house in a decent neighborhood. The landlady, Mrs. Chen, was a Chinese woman who spoke excellent English and ran her establishment with stern efficiency. She showed them to a small room on the 3rd floor with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the street. "It is not much," Xavier said once they were alone. "It is perfect," Evelyn said honestly. "It is ours, and it is in San Francisco. That is all I need." They spent their first weeks in the city exploring and establishing themselves. Xavier found work quickly at a large stable that provided horses for the city's wealthier residents. The pay was decent, and his skills were appreciated. Evelyn began investigating opportunities for herself, which proved more challenging. The universities she approached were polite but clear. They did not admit women, or if they did, it was only to specific programs deemed appropriate for female sensibilities. Evelyn was disappointed but not defeated. She began attending public lectures, joining discussion groups, seeking out the intellectual community she craved. It was at one of these lectures that she met Margaret Richardson, a formidable woman in her 50s who ran a salon for writers and artists. Margaret listened to Evelyn talk about her aspirations and nodded approvingly. "You have fire," Margaret said, "and talent from what I see in your journal. We need more voices like yours. Come to my salon next Thursday evening. Bring some of your work to share." Evelyn attended the salon nervously, clutching a folder of her poems and story fragments. The gathering was in Margaret's elegant home, filled with people who intimidated and inspired Evelyn in equal measure. There were established writers, journalists, painters, musicians, all engaged in passionate discussions about art and politics and the future of American culture. When it was Evelyn's turn to share, her hands shook as she read one of her poems. It was about Montana, about the tension between loving a place and needing to leave it. When she finished, there was a moment of silence that felt eternal. Then a well-dressed man began to clap. Others joined in. Margaret was nodding, a satisfied smile on her face. "That was powerful," the man said. He introduced himself as Jonathan Foster, editor of a small but respected literary magazine. "Have you published anything before?" "No," Evelyn admitted. "I have been too isolated until now." Well, that changes tonight. I would like to publish that poem in our next issue, and I would be interested in seeing more of your work. Evelyn felt like she might cry or laugh or both. Yes, absolutely yes. The salon became a regular part of her life. She made friends, received feedback on her writing, and began to build a reputation. Her work started appearing in magazines and journals, small publications initially, but each one felt like a victory. She was not just dreaming anymore. She was doing. Xavier supported her completely. He attended readings when he could, proudly introducing himself as her husband. He listened to her read drafts aloud, offering honest reactions. He celebrated her successes and comforted her through the inevitable rejections. Their life in San Francisco settled into a rhythm. Xavier worked at the stable during the day while Evelyn wrote and attended lectures and salon gatherings. In the evenings, they explored the city together, discovering favorite restaurants and hidden parks and theaters where they watched performances that ranged from sublime to terrible, but were always entertaining. They made love often, finding joy in each other's bodies and in the intimacy that deepened with time. Their small room in the boarding house became a sanctuary, a place where they could be completely themselves. But Evelyn still had dreams beyond San Francisco. She wanted to travel more, to see New York and Boston, maybe even Europe someday. She wanted to keep pushing herself, keep growing. "I worry sometimes that you will get tired of all my ambition," she admitted to Xavier one night as they lay tangled together in their narrow bed. "Why would I tire of what I love most about you?" Xavier said, stroking her hair. "Your ambition, your drive, your refusal to accept limitations, those are not flaws, Evelyn. They are gifts. But they mean we may never have a settled life. I may always want to be chasing the next thing. Then we will chase them together." He kissed her forehead. "I told you that night in Montana that I wanted to dream with you. I meant it. Wherever those dreams take us, I am there. Even if it means constant uncertainty. I have lived with uncertainty my whole adult life. The difference now is that I am not alone in it." He shifted so he could look into her eyes. "You are my home, Evelyn, not a place, not a house. As long as we are together, I am where I belong." Evelyn kissed him deeply, overwhelmed by the fierce love she felt. "I do not know what I did to deserve you. You were brave enough to claim your life. That is more than most people ever manage." As 1883 arrived, Evelyn received an offer that felt like destiny. A woman's college in Massachusetts, one of the few institutions genuinely committed to female education, had read her published work and was impressed. They offered her a place in their literature program, with a small scholarship to help with expenses. "It is not a full university," the letter explained, "but we provide rigorous academic training equal to any men's institution. We believe you would thrive here." Evelyn showed Xavier the letter with trembling hands. "This is what I wanted. A chance at real education, at being taken seriously as a scholar and a writer." "Then we are going to Massachusetts," Xavier said without hesitation. "But you have steady work here. We have built a life. And we will build another one there. That is the beauty of our arrangement, Evelyn. We are not tied to any one place. We can create home wherever we go." They made the decision to move east, though it meant another long journey and starting over yet again. Evelyn felt guilty about uprooting them so soon after settling, but Xavier was genuinely excited about the prospect. "I have never been to New England," he said while helping her pack their few belongings. "It will be an adventure." They left San Francisco in the spring of 1883, both feeling bittersweet about departing. Evelyn had made genuine friendships and had established herself in the literary community. But the pull of further education was too strong to resist. The journey across the country was even longer than their trip to California, taking nearly 2 weeks with various connections and delays. They traveled through deserts and mountains and endless plains, watching America's vastness unfold outside their train windows. Xavier entertained Evelyn with stories from his drifting years, tales of strange towns and stranger characters he had encountered. Evelyn shared her anxieties about starting school, about being older than most students, about whether she was truly good enough for this opportunity. "You are more than good enough," Xavier assured her. "You have lived more, experienced more than girls coming straight from finishing schools. That depth will make you a better student and a better writer." They arrived in Massachusetts in late spring, when the landscape was explosively green and flowering. The college was in a small town west of Boston, surrounded by rolling hills and old stone walls. It looked like something from a painting, all ivy-covered brick buildings and tree-lined paths. Evelyn felt her anxiety spike as they approached the campus. "What if I do not fit in?" "Then you will change their definition of fitting in," Xavier said, squeezing her hand. The college did not allow married students to live on campus, which was fine with Evelyn. She and Xavier found a small cottage on the edge of town, a charming 2-room structure with a garden and a view of a nearby pond. Xavier found work at a local estate that kept extensive stables, and his skills with horses once again proved valuable. Starting classes at 24 years old was intimidating. Most of Evelyn's classmates were 18 or 19, fresh from privileged homes and sophisticated preparatory schools. They looked at Evelyn curiously, this older woman from Montana who was married and who spoke with a Western directness that contrasted with their Eastern refinement. But Evelyn refused to let their curiosity cow her. She threw herself into her studies with fierce determination. Literature, philosophy, composition, history. She absorbed everything, finally satisfying the intellectual hunger that had gnawed at her for years. Her professors recognized her talent and her unusual perspective. Her essays drew on experiences those younger students could not imagine. She wrote about the West, about independence and isolation, about the challenges of women trying to forge their own paths. Her work was published in the college literary magazine, then in larger regional publications. Xavier was her rock through all of it. He listened to her rehearse presentations, read her papers, and celebrated her achievements. He made their cottage a haven where Evelyn could retreat from the pressures of academia. He cooked meals, tended the garden, and never once made her feel guilty for the time her studies required. "Do you ever regret giving up your drifting life?" Evelyn asked him one evening. They were sitting outside, watching fireflies emerge as dusk settled. "Never," Xavier said firmly. "I thought I valued freedom above everything, but I have learned that true freedom is not about avoiding commitment. It is about choosing your commitments wisely. I chose you, and it is the best choice I have ever made. Even though it means being tied to one place while I study, even though it means you are the one making sacrifices so I can pursue my dreams, I am not sacrificing," Xavier said. "I am participating. Your success is my success. Your happiness is my happiness. We are partners, remember." Evelyn leaned against him, feeling overwhelming gratitude. "I want you to have dreams too, though, not just support mine." "I have dreams," Xavier said thoughtfully. "I want to keep learning alongside you. I want to see you become the writer and scholar you are meant to be. I want us to build a life that is rich and meaningful, defined by experiences rather than possessions. Those are my dreams, and they are happening right now." Evelyn completed her studies in 1885, graduating with honors. Her thesis, a collection of essays about women's experiences in the American West, was praised by faculty and was being considered for publication as a book. She was 26 years old, and the world felt wide open before her. After graduation, she and Xavier had to decide their next move. Evelyn had offers to continue her studies, to pursue a graduate degree. But she also felt pulled to return west, to apply what she had learned to telling the stories of the region and people she knew best. "I want to go back," she told Xavier. "Not to Montana necessarily, but to the West. I want to document the stories that are being lost, the experiences of people trying to build lives in that harsh, beautiful landscape." "Then that is what we will do," Xavier said. They settled in Denver, Colorado in the fall of 1885. It was a booming city, growing rapidly as mining and railroads brought wealth and people. It was also a place where Evelyn's Western credentials gave her credibility. She began working as a journalist, writing feature stories about the changing West. She interviewed miners and ranchers, indigenous peoples and immigrants, women running boarding houses and men building fortunes. Her articles were honest and sometimes controversial. She wrote about the injustices she witnessed, the way native peoples were being pushed off their lands, the dangerous conditions in mines, the limited options available to women. She also wrote about beauty and resilience, about the extraordinary courage it took to build lives in an unforgiving environment. Xavier worked various jobs in Denver, never concerned with status or prestige. He managed stables, worked construction, did whatever was needed to contribute financially while giving Evelyn space to focus on her writing. He was proud of her growing reputation, never jealous or diminished by her success. Their marriage deepened during this time. They had weathered challenges together and had proven their commitment repeatedly. They knew each other's rhythms, understood when the other needed space or support. They still made love with passion and tenderness, still found joy in small moments together. In 1887, Evelyn's book was published. It was called Voices of the West, a collection of essays and stories about the people and places she had encountered. The book received positive reviews and sold well, especially in Western territories, where readers recognized the authenticity of her portrayal. "You did it," Xavier said, holding the first printed copy of her book with reverent care. "You took your dreams and made them real." "We did it," Evelyn corrected. "This book exists because you believed in me, because you supported me through every step." "No," Xavier said gently. "This book exists because you are talented and determined and brave. I am honored to have been part of the journey, but this is your achievement." Evelyn wrapped her arms around him. "I could not have done any of this without you. That first night in Montana, you told me to dream with you. You kept that promise. You have been with me through every dream, every challenge, every success. And I will be with you through whatever comes next." What came next was more than they expected. Evelyn's book led to speaking engagements, invitations to lecture at universities, requests for more writing. She became a recognized voice on Western issues, someone whose opinion was sought and respected. She used her platform to advocate for better treatment of indigenous peoples, for women's rights, for fair labor practices. Xavier remained her steady anchor through it all. When success threatened to become overwhelming, he reminded her of what truly mattered. When criticism stung, he helped her maintain perspective. When new opportunities arose, he helped her evaluate them thoughtfully rather than reactively. They traveled together extensively during this period, Evelyn gathering material for articles and books, Xavier exploring the West he had once drifted through with new purpose. They visited Yellowstone, witnessed its geothermal wonders. They traveled to the Southwest, where Evelyn documented the lives of Mexican and Indian communities. They returned to Montana briefly, where Evelyn saw how the state had changed in the years since she left. They also started talking about children, a topic they had avoided during their nomadic early years. Both were now in their late 20s, established enough to consider expanding their family. "I want children with you," Evelyn said one evening as they sat in their Denver home, a modest but comfortable house they had purchased with proceeds from her book sales. "I want to raise them to believe in dreams and hard work, to value experiences over possessions, to respect all people regardless of their circumstances." "I want that too," Xavier said. "I want to give them what my father could not give me, acceptance of whoever they choose to be." Evelyn became pregnant in the spring of 1889. The pregnancy was healthy but challenging, as her body adjusted to the demands of growing another life while she tried to maintain her writing schedule. Xavier was attentive and supportive, taking on more household responsibilities and insisting she rest when she needed to. Their son was born in January of 1890, a healthy boy they named Thomas, after Evelyn's father. Holding him for the first time, Evelyn felt a fierce protective love that was different from anything she had experienced before. This was not just her dream anymore. This was a new life with his own potential for dreams. "He is perfect," Xavier said, gazing at his son with wonder. "He has your stubborn chin." "And your eyes," Evelyn said, noting the deep brown already evident in their baby's gaze. Parenthood changed them but did not diminish their partnership. They shared responsibilities equally, Xavier caring for Thomas with the same competence he brought to everything else. Evelyn continued writing, though her schedule adapted to accommodate nursing and the unpredictable needs of an infant. When Thomas was 6 months old, Evelyn received an offer that felt like the culmination of everything she had worked toward. A major publishing house in New York wanted to commission a comprehensive book about the American West, a serious work that would combine historical research with personal narratives. It was a massive project, the kind that could define her career. "It will take years to complete," Evelyn told Xavier. "Years of research and travel and writing. With a baby, I do not know if it is possible." "Why would it not be possible?" Xavier asked, bouncing Thomas gently in his arms. "Because I cannot do both. I cannot be a good mother and also devote myself to a project like this." "Who says?" Xavier challenged. "You can absolutely do both. We will figure it out together, we always do. But Thomas needs me, he is so small. He needs both of us. And he needs to see his mother pursuing her passions, accomplishing great things. That is not selfish, Evelyn. That is showing him how to live a meaningful life." Evelyn accepted the commission. The next several years were intensely busy but incredibly fulfilling. She and Xavier developed routines that allowed her to travel for research while maintaining family stability. Sometimes, Xavier and Thomas accompanied her on trips. Other times, Xavier managed alone in Denver while Evelyn conducted intensive research or interviews. The work was exhausting but exhilarating. Evelyn documented everything from cattle drives to railroad construction, from mining camps to nascent cities. She interviewed hundreds of people, collecting their stories and perspectives. She pored over historical documents, piecing together the larger narrative of Western expansion with all its triumphs and tragedies. Through it all, her marriage to Xavier remained strong. They made time for each other, protecting their relationship even amid the chaos of work and parenting. They still talked late into the night, still found moments for intimacy and connection. Thomas grew into a bright, curious toddler who loved books and horses equally. He traveled with his parents enough to be comfortable with change, but had enough stability to feel secure. He was being raised exactly as they had hoped, in an environment that valued learning and adventure and kindness. In 1895, when Thomas was 5 years old and starting school, Evelyn completed her manuscript. It was over 500 pages, a comprehensive examination of the American West that balanced celebration of its unique character with honest assessment of its costs. She titled it The Price of Dreams, acknowledging both the aspirations that drove Western expansion and the sacrifices it demanded from the land and its original inhabitants. The book was published in 1896 to widespread acclaim. Critics praised its scope and honesty. It sold exceptionally well, becoming required reading in universities and sparking important conversations about American history and identity. Evelyn was 37 years old and had achieved everything she had dreamed of that night in Montana when she told the Prestons she wanted more than a conventional life. She had traveled, studied, written books that mattered, made a name for herself in a field dominated by men. And she had done it all while building a strong marriage and raising a son. "Do you have any regrets?" Xavier asked her on the evening of her book launch party in Denver. They were getting ready for the event, and Evelyn caught his reflection in the mirror as she pinned up her hair. "Not a single one," she said honestly. "Every choice I made, even the difficult ones, led me here. To you, to Thomas, to this life we have built together. Even leaving Montana, even taking all those risks, especially those things." She turned to face him directly. "If I had married Samuel Preston, if I had stayed on that ranch and lived the safe, expected life, I would have died slowly inside. My body would have been alive, but my spirit would have withered. You saved me from that." "You saved yourself," Xavier said, moving closer. "I just provided encouragement. You provided so much more than that. You provided partnership, equality, unwavering support. You believed in me when I barely believed in myself. You sacrificed your freedom so I could claim mine." "I never saw it as sacrifice," Xavier said. "I saw it as choosing the best possible version of my life. Drifting was freedom, yes, but it was also emptiness. Loving you, building a life with you, that is both freedom and purpose together." They kissed, a long, deep kiss that still held all the passion of their early days but was enriched now by years of shared experience. The book launch party was a triumph. Friends and colleagues filled the venue, celebrating Evelyn's achievement. Thomas attended, dressed in his best clothes, proud of his mother even if he did not fully understand what she had accomplished. Xavier stood beside Evelyn as she gave a speech, his quiet pride evident to everyone present. "I want to thank my husband," Evelyn said during her remarks, "who has been my partner in every sense of that word, who taught me that dreams are not burdens to be carried alone but joys to be shared, who showed me that choosing love does not mean abandoning ambition, but rather finding someone who will champion your ambitions as fiercely as you do." Xavier met her eyes from across the room, and the look they shared contained volumes of love and understanding and shared history. Life settled into a new rhythm after the book's publication. Evelyn continued writing, though at a less intense pace. She took on projects that interested her, spoke at universities and conferences, but also made time to be present for Thomas's childhood. Xavier had taken a position managing stables for a wealthy Denver family, work that gave him satisfaction and fair compensation. They bought a larger house with room for Evelyn's expanding library and office, with a stable where Xavier could keep horses, with a yard where Thomas could play. It was the first place that truly felt like a permanent home, and they both took joy in that permanence after years of moving. Thomas grew into a thoughtful, intelligent boy who loved learning and who showed early talent for both writing and horsemanship. Evelyn and Xavier were careful not to impose their own dreams on him, but rather to expose him to many possibilities and trust him to find his own path. When Thomas was 10, Evelyn gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Clara. The pregnancy was harder this time, Evelyn being older, but the result was worth it. Clara was a serious baby who studied the world with intense focus, and both parents fell in love immediately. "Our family is complete," Evelyn said, holding Clara while Thomas sat beside her on the bed, gently touching his sister's tiny hand. "It is perfect," Xavier agreed. "Two amazing children, a strong marriage, meaningful work. This is more than I ever imagined having." Evelyn looked around the room, at her husband and children, at the life they had built through courage and partnership, and unwavering belief in each other's dreams. She thought back to that night in Montana, when she had declared her dreams to the horrified Prestons, when she had felt trapped and desperate. She thought about Xavier stepping out of the shadows and telling her that dreams were not foolish, that wanting more was not selfish. She thought about his offer to dream with her, the simple words that had changed everything. "Thank you," she said to Xavier, her voice thick with emotion. "For what? For seeing me when I felt invisible, for believing in me when I doubted myself, for choosing to build this life with me instead of continuing to drift alone, for keeping your promise to dream with me." Xavier's eyes were suspiciously bright as he leaned over to kiss her forehead. "Thank you for letting me. Thank you for being brave enough to claim your dreams and generous enough to include me in them. You have given me purpose and joy and a home that is not a place but a feeling. You have given me everything that matters." Thomas looked up at his parents, not fully understanding the emotion in the room but recognizing its importance. Clara slept peacefully, unaware of anything beyond milk and warmth and safety. The years continued to unfold with their mix of challenge and joy. Evelyn published more books, each one building on her reputation as an important voice in American letters. Xavier managed the stables and raised horses that became sought after throughout the region. Thomas attended university and chose to become a teacher, wanting to share knowledge with others. Clara grew into a spirited girl who was passionate about art and determined to become a painter. Both children were raised to respect others regardless of background, to value education and hard work, to believe that dreams were achievable with persistence and courage. They saw their parents' equal partnership and internalized that model for their own future relationships. Evelyn and Xavier grew older together, their hair graying, their bodies accumulating the wear of long, active lives. But their love never diminished. If anything, it deepened with time, enriched by shared memories and weathered challenges, and the profound satisfaction of having built something meaningful together. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1905, they took a trip alone, leaving Thomas and Clara with Xavier's aunt who lived in Denver. They traveled back to Montana, wanting to see the landscape that had shaped both of them in different ways. The ranch where Evelyn had grown up was still operating, though under different ownership. They did not visit it, not wanting to disturb the life that was happening there now. Instead, they rode horses into the surrounding hills, camping under stars that blazed with the clarity only Montana skies could offer. "You ever wonder what would have happened if we had never met?" Evelyn asked, lying beside Xavier near their campfire. "I try not to," Xavier said. "The thought is too depressing. I would probably still be drifting, working random jobs, never connecting deeply with anyone, growing old and alone without ever understanding what I was missing. I would have married Samuel Preston, probably," Evelyn said thoughtfully, "or someone like him. I would have convinced myself to be practical, to accept the limitations others imposed. I would have buried my dreams so deep that eventually I would have forgotten I ever had them." But that did not happen, Xavier said, rolling onto his side to look at her. Even after 20 years, his gaze still made her heart flutter slightly. You were brave enough to declare what you wanted, and I was lucky enough to be there to hear it. We were both lucky, Evelyn said. Lucky to find each other at exactly the moment we each needed someone to believe in us. They made love under the Montana stars, their passion tempered by familiarity but no less genuine. Afterward, holding each other in the cool night air, Evelyn felt complete in a way she had not even known to dream about all those years ago. The trip reminded them both of how far they had come, of the courage it had taken to choose the uncertain path, of the rewards that came from refusing to accept limitations. They returned to Denver refreshed and recommitted to continuing their journey together. Thomas graduated from university and began teaching at a school for children from immigrant families, determined to provide opportunities others had given him. He married a fellow teacher, a thoughtful woman named Margaret who shared his values. They gave Evelyn and Xavier 2 grandchildren, a girl and a boy, who brought new joy and energy into the family. Clara attended art school in New York, then traveled to Paris to study painting. She returned to Denver with a French husband, a sculptor named Laurent who was as passionate about his art as Clara was about hers. They settled near Evelyn and Xavier, building careers in the Western art scene that was beginning to flourish. As Evelyn entered her 50s and then her 60s, she continued writing but at a slower pace. She mentored younger women writers, using her platform to help others find their voices. She gave interviews about her life and career, always careful to credit Xavier's support and partnership as essential to her success. Xavier, too, aged gracefully, still working with horses well into his 60s. His reputation for skill and integrity meant he was always in demand, and he genuinely loved the work. He also took more time to simply be with Evelyn, recognizing that the years ahead were fewer than those behind. They talked often about their journey, marveling at how a chance meeting on a Montana ranch had led to this rich, full life. They remembered the struggles and celebrated the victories. They looked at their children and grandchildren and saw their values being carried forward into new generations. One evening in 1912, sitting on the porch of their Denver home and watching the sun set behind the mountains, Evelyn said, "I have been thinking about my father lately." "What about him?" Xavier asked, holding her hand gently. "About how he raised me with big ideas but expected me to settle for a small life. I do not think he was being hypocritical exactly. I think he genuinely believed he was protecting me from disappointment." "Maybe," Xavier said, "but you showed him wrong, or would have if he had lived to see it." "I hope he would have been proud," Evelyn said softly. "I hope he would have understood that I was not rejecting his legacy, just claiming my own." "He would have been proud," Xavier said with certainty. "How could he not be? You have lived an extraordinary life with courage and integrity. You have made a difference in the world while also building a strong family. You have proven that dreams and reality do not have to be separate things." Evelyn leaned her head on Xavier's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. "I could not have done it without you." "We did it together," Xavier said. "Just like I promised that night. You dream, I dream with you. Our dreams became shared dreams, and they came true because we worked for them together." "You have any regrets?" Evelyn asked. "Anything you wish you had done differently?" Xavier was quiet for a long moment, then said, "I regret not reconciling with my father before he died. I wish I could have made him understand that choosing my own path was not a rejection of him, but an affirmation of the independence and courage he taught me without realizing it." "What else?" Evelyn asked gently. "Nothing else," Xavier said firmly. Every choice I made, from leaving Texas to taking that job on your ranch to traveling across the country with you to raising our children here, all of it was exactly right. I have lived a good life, Evelyn, a meaningful life. And it is all because I was brave enough to ask you to dream with me, and you were generous enough to say yes. Evelyn felt tears on her cheeks. I love you so much. After all these years, after everything we have been through, I love you more than I did on our wedding day. I love you too, Xavier said, kissing the top of her head. You are the best decision I ever made. They sat together as darkness fell, holding hands and watching the stars emerge. Inside the house, they could hear Clara and Laurent laughing about something, the sound of their granddaughter practicing piano, the comfortable noise of family. Outside, the world continued its changes, but in this moment, everything was perfect. Evelyn lived to be 76 years old, dying peacefully in 1929, with Xavier holding her hand. She left behind 6 published books, hundreds of articles and essays, 2 children, 4 grandchildren, and a legacy of courage and determination that inspired countless women to pursue their own dreams despite opposition and limitation. Xavier lived another 3 years, never quite whole without Evelyn, but sustained by memories of their extraordinary partnership. He spent his final years with his children and grandchildren, telling stories about their mother and grandmother, making sure the family understood what a remarkable woman she had been. When Xavier died in 1932 at age 77, he was buried beside Evelyn in a Denver cemetery. Their shared headstone bore a simple inscription suggested by Thomas. They dreamed together. The story of Evelyn Daniels and Xavier Emerson became part of family lore, passed down through generations. Their great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren learned about the woman who refused to accept limitations, and the man who supported her dreams as if they were his own. They learned about courage and partnership, about choosing love that empowered rather than constrained, about building a life based on shared values rather than conventional expectations. The ranch in Montana, where they met, was long gone by the time their descendants told these stories, replaced by subdivisions and shopping centers. But the mountains remained, and the vast sky, and the spirit of possibility that had drawn so many people west in search of something better than what they had known. Evelyn's books remained in print, studied by historians and literary scholars interested in authentic voices from the American West. Her personal papers, donated to a university library, provided insights into the challenges women faced in pursuing intellectual and professional ambitions in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. But more than her professional legacy, Evelyn left behind proof that dreams could be realized through courage and partnership, that a woman could claim her own life without losing love, that supporting another person's dreams did not diminish your own, but rather enriched them. The evening in Montana, when Evelyn declared her dreams, and Xavier replied with an invitation to dream together, became the foundation of a love story that lasted over 30 years and influenced generations. It proved that the right partnership at the right moment could change the course of a life, could transform isolation into belonging, could turn dreams into reality. Their story was one of many from that tumultuous period when the American West was being transformed from frontier to civilization. But it was unique in its demonstration that progress did not have to mean conformity, that tradition could coexist with innovation, that love could be both romantic passion and practical partnership. The descendants who gathered occasionally to remember Evelyn and Xavier always came away with renewed determination to live courageously, to pursue their own dreams, to seek partnerships that empowered rather than constrained. They understood that their ancestors' greatest gift was not just the books she wrote or the horses he trained, but the example they set of what two people could build together when they refused to accept limitations. And so the legacy continued, rippling forward through time, touching lives that would never know the direct source of their inspiration, but who benefited nonetheless from two people who, on a Montana ranch in 1882, chose courage and partnership over safety and convention, who chose to dream together instead of settling for separate, smaller lives. The specific details of their daily existence faded with time, but the essential truth remained. Dreams were not too big when you had the right person to dream them with. Love did not require sacrifice of self, but rather celebration of each partner's full potential. A life well lived was not measured by comfort and conformity, but by courage and connection. These truths, learned and lived by Evelyn Daniels and Xavier Emerson, became their true legacy, more enduring than any book or reputation, more valuable than any material success. They proved that two people meeting by chance could create something intentional and beautiful, that saying yes to uncertainty could lead to profound certainty, that dreaming together was better than any solitary achievement. And on clear nights in Montana, when the stars blazed overhead and the mountains stood eternal against the sky, it was still possible to imagine a young woman declaring her impossible dreams and a cowboy stepping from the shadows to say the words that would change everything. Then dream them with me. Those words, simple but revolutionary, captured the essence of their entire life together. Partnership over possession, support over control, shared journey over separate destinations. They were words that transformed two lonely drifters into partners, collaborators, lovers, parents, and finally elders who could look back on their choices with satisfaction and gratitude. The world they helped create, through Evelyn's writing and Xavier's support, through their children's choices and their grandchildren's lives, was one where dreams were not foolish but essential, where women's ambitions were celebrated rather than suppressed, where partnership meant equality and mutual respect rather than hierarchy and control. This was the world they had dreamed together, worked for together, and ultimately brought into being through their daily choices over decades of marriage. It was not perfect. They had known that it never would be, but it was better than what had come before, more open and more just and more respectful of individual dreams regardless of gender or background. As the 20th century progressed and society continued its evolution toward greater equality and opportunity, Evelyn and Xavier's story remained relevant, a reminder that progress came from individual courage as much as from larger social movements, that every life lived authentically helped expand the possibilities for others, that love at its best was transformative for both partners and for the world they influenced. Their story, beginning with a declaration of dreams too big for the conventional life available to a Montana rancher's daughter, and a cowboy's simple invitation to share those dreams, became a testament to what was possible when two people chose each other fully, supported each other completely, and refused to let society's limitations define their shared life. And that, more than any professional achievement or material success, was their greatest legacy and their most enduring gift to all who came after them.